Good morning, students. Today we're going to learn about cystic fibrosis and Huntington's. And so for the academic objectives, students will recognize that traits that lead to cystic fibrosis and other similar diseases are passed from parent to child through genes. It's nothing new. We're just adding on to now include, besides traits, we're going to add disorders. An important concept that students should recognize is genes that causes cystic fibrosis and other genetic disorders and traits are located on the chromosomes. And going back on the behavior objectives, students are to show integrity and uphold academic honesty. Moving on. Now these are the vocabulary. First one, most important one we should learn is mutation. It is a change to the genetic material of an organism, which is DNA. And mutations can be good or bad. Now, the first genetic disorder we're going to talk about is cystic fibrosis. It is a disorder which causes the production of abnormally thick mucus. Now, this mucus is so thick, the body cannot clear away this mucus properly. And people who suffers from cystic fibrosis tends to have respiratory infections, so they have lung infections. Now, cystic fibrosis affects mucus. Mucus is a slimy substance which actually plays many roles in the body, and it protects, it lubricates, and moisturizes passageways in the body. And so in cystic fibrosis, since the body is not able to clear away this mucus, this results in blockages and bacteria can get trapped inside these passageways, which leads to the infection. Another disorder we're going to talk about is Huntington's. This is a fatal genetic disorder where brain and nerve cells will degenerate, so they'll die slowly. And this cell dying results in decline in physical and mental abilities. Now, people with this disorder, if you ever meet someone with Huntington's, they will have uncontrollable shaking, or they actually can't move certain parts of their body. And in the long run, in the end, the patient will actually lose full control of his or her body. Last but not least, genetic disease or disorder. This is any condition caused by abnormalities in the genome, so in the genes of the individual, that can be inherited or acquired. So you could have inherited from your parents, or a sudden mutation occurred, a sudden change occurred, and now you are affected by this disorder. Now, let's return to the big question. So we were talking about how do genetic traits get passed down from generation to generation. So we have learned a number of things before spring break. We learned about traits are passed on from parent to offspring, as I shown you in the Punnett square. We can predict the traits and physical traits of offspring. So you can predict the genotype and the phenotype of offspring with the Punnett square. And most importantly, we learned traits are made up of genetic information. It is made of DNA. Now, knowing these 3 points, we're going to add a little plot twist. What will happen when there are changes to the DNA, so mutations, to body cells and sex cells, so body cells and sex cells? this mutation in the DNA of sex cells, so in sperm and egg, if there are mutations, offsprings will inherit the genetic disorder from their parents. So if mom and dad both have genetic disorders, then the sex cells will have in their genes, in the DNA, these mutations. And so the offspring can have a chance of inheriting it. Because remember, sex cells are only half of the DNA of mom or dad. And so offspring runs the chance of inheriting genetic disorders. Now, let's talk about the first genetic disorder, cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is what we call a recessive disorder. And so, first, what is cystic fibrosis? Cystic fibrosis is when there's a mutation for mucus-producing cells, and so there's a abnormality now. The mucus that gets produced by these cells are now thicker. This results in a buildup of mucus in key passageways in the body, so the body can't clear out this mucus. And so certain glands can get blocked out, and then there can be mucus, as shown in the picture right here, in the passageway of the lungs. And so people with cystic fibrosis can have malnutrition, but most importantly, they actually run a high chance of getting a lung infection. And so patients with cystic fibrosis in their lifetime actually goes through a lot of hospitalizations due to these infections and cases of malnutrition. Now, this disorder is a recessive disorder. All it means is, in order to get cystic fibrosis, both parents must carry the allele for this disorder. Now, when both parents have one allele, the offspring has a chance to get the disorder. And this disorder is represented with the genotype of 2 lowercase c's, because this is a recessive disorder. Now, the next disorder, Huntington's, is a dominant disorder. And so in the case of Huntington's, this is a mutation in nerve cells, which causes the cells to actually die when the patient is in their late 20s or 30s. And with this cell death that is happening, this results in a degeneration of the brain and the nerves. And so, as shown in the picture right here for the brain, a healthy brain is a big, chunky mass of brain cells. Now, those with Huntington's, the cells are now dying, and so holes starts forming in the certain areas of the brain. And so now, with this death of brain cells and nerve cells, the patient now has loss of movement, coordination, and mental abilities. And so patients now have, first, they can't control their own bodies, and they have moments where they do not have clear thought, so they're not lucid. So they either talk nonsense, they hallucinate, etc. Now, this condition is unfortunately fatal, because we all know when you lose nerve cells, nerve cells are not replaceable. We do not have the ability to replace nerve cells. Now, Huntington's is a dominant disorder. So what does this mean? This means that all you need is one allele for Huntington's, and you have the disorder. That's all you need, one allele. So if mom or dad or both transfer one allele to the offspring, and the offspring then the offspring will inherit the disorder. And so in order to write the genotype of Huntington's, the offspring can be heterozygous. So one capital H, one lowercase h. That means the offspring has Huntington's. Now, in the rare case, this is very rare, the offspring is homozygous dominant, then the offspring has Huntington's. And so in the end, what I'm trying to show you is that we cannot control the passage of genes, but we can predict it through the Punnett square. And so for today's assignment, Ms. Butler would like you to watch this video. After you watch this video, you will find in the Google Classroom assignment tab, you will find two Google Docs. The first one is a project board. And so you're going to open the project board and fill it out to the best of your abilities. The second assignment would be a CER. Now, Ms. Butler would like you to emphasize that you need to use evidence in your claim. You need to reference your evidence. In the end, when you write any claim, you should always have evidence in your reasoning. Now, for those of you who are doing your CER and do not know how to start writing, Mr. McKay told me that you have a CEER and from English, from humanities. And that package that you have will give you sentence stems to help you write your CER. And so, good luck.